the other day that stopped me in my tracks, and it's been a while. The fact was, chronic complaining can lead to Alzheimer's and dementia.
I believe it because it makes me start to catalog how often I complain and how long I get stuck on something complaining.
Yes, because that's now when I complain. I catch myself and I'm like, and I remember that fact. And I'm like, ooh, do I need to be talking about this? Am I complaining? And then it got me thinking, we need to discern the difference between complaining and venting. I want to make it clear that this isn't about never bringing up issues, right? This isn't about like looking on the bright side all the time or staying toxic positivity or anything like that. Because you still want to bring things up that like upset you or injustices, right? Like that's not the same as complaining. Complaining is when you don't really have multiple points of view. You are trying to convince someone of something. When you are venting, you might be talking about something that's happened to you and how it affected you, and you will be open to seeing it from other people's perspectives because you're just telling people, you know, the facts, right? And then you're saying how it affected you, and maybe they can offer some perspective. But when you're complaining, you might be really rigid on how you see the situation. So that might be an indicator on whether it's complaining versus venting. Another indicator is how often you do it as well.
And is Alzheimer's just you being, like, if you are narrow-minded, like, complaining makes you narrow-minded in a way, right? And I'm using that term loosely, not, like, physiologically. Like, you start to narrow in your perspective and only see it one way, your way. Is that impacting in the brain that is Alzheimer's? Because when you start to look at symptoms of Alzheimer's, people are so, and I'm going to use the word selfish, even though we know they have a disease, but they're so, the first signs of it are people getting really angry and focused in on something.
I'm wondering if, it made me think of something. When you said narrowing perspective, it made me think of the fact that, like, when you can see things from other people's perspective, you are having more neural connections.
You're exercising your brain.
Yeah, that's just how it works, because you have to have more than one perspective, which would cause more than one neural connection, which would make your brain more active in general, just being more open-minded. And so if I'm remembering correctly, when they look at Alzheimer brains, the neurons are like tangled. So another way to figure out if you're venting versus complaining is the frequency. Have you already talked about this? Is this something that like you've talked about over and over and over again, right?
Right.
Is this something you keep bringing up and complaining about, or do you frequency? Do you throughout your day find things to complain about? Then you might be a complainer, a chronic complainer. Is there always something negative that you can see in things? And then participation is another indicator of complaining. Complainers don't really want solutions. They want like yes men who come in and they're like, yeah, you should be mad. Yeah. They want someone to complain with them.
And it goes to that multiple perspective. Are they always like the F you, and they're never like the congratulations, so-and-so did, you know? I really appreciate that X happened. And I think that's the power of gratitude, dude. And I honestly think it is. It's like flipping a switch. It's the pendulum. What's the opposite of complaining?
Appreciation and gratitude.
Gratitude, yeah.
So inversely, gratitude is associated with an increase in neural modulation of the prefrontal cortex. It strengthens the brain's neural circuits when you have gratitude. You know, if you are someone who complains a lot, don't panic. Start practicing gratitude because it has an opposite effect, which is beautiful. That is so cool.
That is fucking beautiful.
Yeah. And if you don't believe it, like, let's get into the mechanisms of it. There is a part of your brain called the hippocampus, and it is responsible for emotions, memory, and the autonomic nervous system.
So I think that's the part that people often associate with like fight or flight, but it's more stuff than just that. It's like all of like how you're like, it's everything that's like automatic in your body.
So it's involuntary and unconscious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Heart rate, blood pressure, your every like what keeps your body in homeostasis is the autonomic nervous system. You talk about evolutionarily, it was there for a long time because how many organisms are breathing, living, doing respiration.
Well, and it makes sense that it's been there for a long time because where it's located in the brain, the most primitive parts of our brain that have been there the longest are located in the center, and then the most newly developed ones are located on the outside, like the prefrontal cortex and things like that. The hippocampus is in the middle. When you complain, it shrinks the hippocampus. So this is a part of your brain that is responsible for emotion and memory, and it gets smaller if you're a chronic complainer. They did a study at Stanford University, and this is where they found that complaining shrinks the hippocampus. Damage to the hippocampus is concerning because it's the same area that has damage when you look at a brain that has Alzheimer's.
It's definitely something that should be studied more, and it also is enough data and validation for me to want to change my behavior. I'll tell you that right now.
Exactly. That's how I felt about it.
Thanks for sharing.
Of course. I just thought it was important, and I think a lot of people could benefit from it. And I know we all nobody wants to necessarily complain all the time. It's just something that happens. And with everything going on, it's so easy.
Yeah, it makes me thankful that you came across this information and that we did this deep dive.
Yes, especially because we have the solutions. Like if you want to counteract this, practice gratitude in your daily life.
Yeah, and if you even think of it as like, gratitude, just know you're just reversing Alzheimer's.
Yes, don't think of it in a cringy way because like, you know when you were like a teenager and you wouldn't like a band because you would meet the fans of the band? It wasn't necessarily that you didn't like the music. It was like the fans left such a bad taste in your mouth that you just didn't want to listen to the music. Don't let the toxic positivity girlies and boys deter you from practicing gratitude because it is scientifically proven to help your brain increase its neural strength and neural circuits, which is so cool.